right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Keep your feedback coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV. Can you use the hashtag Daybreak? We're talking about the manifestos and the economy, which will directly impact you, by the way. My guests are still with me here in studio. Honorable David Osia and CAS Moited, which is the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Enterprise Development. Reginald Katzutu, CEO Amana Capital, is also joining us online. And Joy Kiro, an economist, is with us here in studio. Thank you so much for making time. So keep your views coming. We'll sample some of them in just a bit. I'm looking at the manifesto here, Waziri, page 24, number 18A. So fast track the establishment of industries that use locally available raw materials and expertise. There are industries that have the highest impact on employment creation. Following industries will be prioritized. Integrated steel industry. The primary raw material, iron ore, is available locally and regionally, and there's a huge market both locally and in the rest of Africa. Will further goes ahead, part B, to say there's going to be manufacturing of machines and components for use by other sectors, e.g. automobiles, spare parts, etc. Yeah. What would it take for this country to start manufacturing steel, for example?
Well, iron ore, Kenya is very rich in iron ore. And I have been a great recruit of Afro-optimists. We cannot own 40% of the world's, minerals and basic materials and precious stones, and not take advantage of that ownership to be able to manufacture them. I know that pessimism, we've grown up in a pessimistic Africa where we don't see our capability and capacity to achieve these things. But if we have the deposits of iron ore, as we have in Kitui, as we have in Laikipia, as we have in Lamu, as we have further up north in Garissa, and these deposits are... The studies have shown that they are massive and major, and what we have been doing is to fight with the interests around these deposits. Then why not take advantage of them, working together with the private sector? All right? I think if we give the private sector a chance to come into the nation to explore alongside us, we will achieve them. When we talk about production and manufacturing of parts of vehicles, it's not something that we are just about to start. I am sure many Kenyans don't know that the government under my ministry has an agency called the Numerical Machining Complex. The Numerical Machining Complex is the single agency that is producing all the brake pads and systems of our rails, of our railways, of our rails, of our trains. People don't know. But it's already happening because the government has invested in the Numerical Machining Complex as a center for research, manufacturing, and development, so that then we can have our local, locally made parts and bits. The Numerical Machining Complex is the one, there are components of what we use in our electric lines across the whole country that are made from them. You need to also appreciate that Kenya has huge deposits of scrap metal. And we are trying to see how do we utilize, in respect to becoming a circular economy, appreciating reuse and reinvention and reutilization of all these things. How do we take advantage of this massive market where government has parts and a lot of steel lying around to take them as raw material? And because after iron ore and all, that's the second hugest bit for creating steel. All right? Melt them into usable things. I want to believe that this is achievable. I know, I've been talking during break time, Daktari was thinking, we are going to become Germany in 2 days. Yeah. No. Germany started by becoming Germany, by making the baby steps that then gave us what Germany is today. We are luckier that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Yeah. We have to learn from their experiences to cut short to what our end game is. And so I am a believer in that possibility. And look at the infrastructural development. Kenya is a growing nation. Okay. The need for steel as we try to get into the middle income economy is going to be massive. Okay. And there would be no need whatsoever to import it when we can produce it. Okay.
Joy, this steel conversation becomes a very complex one, because just the other day when in the US, it was a big conversation because most 70% of steel produced uses coal. Do we even want to take that direction to begin with?
Trevor, I would like to put things into perspective, and I would like to On a light note, this discussion reminds me of a conversation I had with my 9-year adorable daughter. She came and she told me, "Mommy, I don't understand why people are still poor." And I said, "Why?" I said, banks are out there giving loans. Get a loan and buy the bank. Pop, you're rich. And
the innocence of a child.
And that's exactly how we are taking this debate.
Yeah.
That we'll wake up, we have coal, we have minerals, we'll exploit them, and we will grow. That's exactly the wisdom we are bringing in here. But that said, we are talking about a document.
Yeah.
It's fair to say what the document is, understand it. Only then you can start to make sense of it. We're talking about a manifesto, promises, right? Now, this political journey is just starting. And the first people to take us forward have got 2 assignments. Assignment number 1, sell us to the people. And your objective, bring us the power, let them vote for us.
Yeah.
And so they have not spared anything to achieve that. So this manifesto is part of a journey to say, sell us. And so what they have done is to go out there and see what does everybody want. Mm-hmm. And whatever you want, it is put there. It's put there. It's put there. It's put there. It's put there. Because that is the spirit of this document. Sell us to the people. Now, the next step is now the hard work. Implementing, fine, the manifesto will take us to State House if we are lucky. It will open doors to State House, and we will go there. The next stage comes, the hard work. This is what they say. When it comes to the hard work, some show up, roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty, and do what needs to be done. Yeah. Others show up and just wriggle their nose. Others never show up at all. So now that is now you start understanding what kind of government has come. Mm-hmm. What are they among those 3 people? And that is where now the rubber meets the road. I think that will be the next discussion.
No. I think it would only be fair after that clear, nice pontification for Daktari to tell us that whereas she believes it is foolhardy for us to talk about the creation of steel industry and the possibility of exploiting our minerals for the sake of manufacturing steel locally, it seems so far-fetched for her as it is far-fetched for her 9-year-old daughter who wishes we could take the loan and buy the bank. We need to get to the credibles, Daktari, and tell us why it is you believe that's not possible. I believe it is possible when we achieve all these other factors of production. If 70% of the world relies on coal, which is not green energy, you need to say, what does 30% of the world rely on? They rely on clean energy. Is it possible to rely on that clean energy and be able to achieve the end results, the desirous end results? I believe so. Will it happen again in 2-3 years? No, it will not. Will it happen in 48 months? We will see a semblance of it. Listen, I have been, and I have told everybody, when Dubai started building their subway, the underground railway line, it looked like a joke in a desert. 48 months down the line, the whole city had the main subway line done and finished. Discipline, ethos, resources. And resources follow ideas. You will get a loan to invest when you're honest. And when we curb the graft problem in Kenya, and we seal the loopholes of corruption, there is possibility to achieve more than we have achieved. South Africa down the road is one of the world's biggest manufacturers of firearms. Globally, Egypt up north has demonstrated how to take 1 million acres of desert land and transform it into farmland. Discipline, dedication, and desire for the people to get better. So, Daktari, I hope that in our next session, and when you will have thought through it clearly, you will be able to say whether it is possible or not. And if you believe it is not, just justify it. Yeah. You're the doctor of economics.
Yeah, we can give you a chance to respond even now.
Yes. And I'm happy to. Yeah. We are talking about 5 years, the next coming 5 years, not Vision 2050. The truth is, if you see countries going heavy on manufacturing, doing steel and doing all these beautiful capital-intensive things, they have been where we were, even worse than where we are. Yeah. And they have taken the steps. They have done what needs to be done. They have built their economies, built resilience, found a niche in manufacturing, and found a niche in terms of capital-intensive production in the global economy. Now, here we are. What is And now when you look at them enjoying their harvest, the fruits of their hard work and resilience and patience and prudent macroeconomic policies, we start envying them and we want to be like them in the next 5 years. What are we going to do? We'll be pushed to eat our seed that we should be planting in the name of wanting to catch up with them.
Okay.
And that will just ruin us. So the point is, let us start the journey.
Good.
But this niche that you're talking about, does the one county, one product come anywhere near to what you envision? Because it doesn't mean that if there's no iron ore in Kitui, then we'll force them to be the ones to get steel. I mean, we could decide that one county, whatever you're good at is what you do. That's what you're calling the niche, right?
Yes, yes.
Would that work? One county,
that
one
is prudent. That is, and the beauty of this is doable. That's doable because of devolution. The governors are able to look and say, this is how my county is endowed. We want to talk about milk in Muranga, for example, because of the dairy. We want to talk about juice and fresh products from Makueni, for example. And the governor and the county governments get a lot of money. And they can just prioritize and see, we are going to build a niche for this and we're going to supply the rest of Kenya. Nobody will compete with Makueni in terms of fresh juices, fresh fruits, and you go out there and get markets within the Kenya.
Okay. Reginald, let me bring you in on this, back on this conversation. When we talk about this coal and steel manufacturing, really, in other countries and in the country in general, is the Azimio team biting more than it can chew?
Not really, Trevor. I keep on belaboring the point that if we discuss the document, we discuss it in its entirety. And it was if you pick one element and try to dissect it by itself, then it does not make sense. But when you pick that element of why do they want to process steel and iron and alloys and make that in the country, and if you read the document, and the reason why I said that document is balanced, because then they connect that to one, the real estate sector, not only in Kenya, but in the region. They also connect that to the agricultural value chain. Why are we importing the basic, that thing that you use to cut wheat, to collect wheat with, and all those things? Why are we importing those things when we can actually manufacture those things, knowing that one, we are generally agricultural, so there will always be local demand for those things. They are not capital intensive, because when people hear manufacturing, people immediately say, this is capital intensive. And no, it actually can be done in a labor intensive way until a place where we can now say, okay, now let's automate it to a way that we can reduce the labor and move the labor into other areas. So they've taken that and said, okay, there's Africa, the region is generally agricultural. Most of us import our tools. We import our rakes, we import our hoes, we import the tilling things that we put on tractors. But there's no rocket science on that. That's work that can be done and with people. How do we harness the skills that we have in those areas, which you find in the Joakali sector, to be able to do some of those small things, but be able to now scale and do it in a large area in a way that you can say, hey, we can actually tell Uganda, you want graders to attach to your tractors, we have them. And you also look at how do they plan to make it also cost effective in terms of cost of electricity, going green. They've talked about taxation to make sure that there's low taxation to allow more investments and also allow cost of goods to actually also come down. So if you look at all those cogs, then you realize, okay, so that's why they would want for us to be able to do this here instead of us exporting our iron ore, because it's a raw material, then getting the steel sheets to come and just to roll here. You buy them at double the price. So you find there is a lot of leakage of economic resources when you are importing things that you can actually do at a cost effective. We are not saying that we import everything. If something is not cost effective for us to make, and when you look at cost effective economies of scale, we should not look at Kenya. And that's what the Azimio Manifesto has at least done. For everything, they've tried to look at the region. Yeah, because the Kenyan market is small. If you start manufacturing steel and alloy only for the Kenyan market, that is a business that will die in less than 3-4 years' time because of lack of demand. But if they look at it from the economic diplomacy angle of it, and we are advantaged as Kenya because we have the port. So we know what Uganda imports. We know what Rwanda imports. We know what Burundi, DRC import using our ports. If it's ball bearings, we ball bearings cheaper than the way these guys. How can we cut the transportation costs, the time frame, the time to factory for Uganda, so that we can become a better destination for these guys? So it makes sense when you look at the whole picture and not at isolated silos of a document.
Yeah, so Reginald, when you look at it all, because I'm looking at it even right now on page 24, there's a lot of issues. There's marine craft, textile, leather industry, chemicals, and also pharmaceutical industries, glass, paper, and pulp. But I'm more interested in part 9, number 19. Where they say they're going to grow the manufacturing to at least 30% of Kenya's GDP. What would it take to achieve that? And is it possible? And in how long would that be done?
It's possible. Growing the manufacturing sector is possible if they do it the way they've envisioned. So you don't grow the manufacturing sector like what Jubilee was trying to do. You get Volvo to come and set up a plant here to assemble Volvos or get Mercedes to. That's not manufacturing. And that doesn't create employment or anything. But if they do manufacturing along the value chains, I think if you look at the document, you'll find there's a cotton value chain, there's the leather value chain, there's the fisheries value chain, there's the other value chains they've put. So manufacturing is coming inside those value chains. Yeah, we are saying we want to process our tea. That's manufacturing. We are saying we want to manufacture the equipment for irrigation. We don't need to import this. We can manufacture this. That is manufacturing. So you find manufacturing the way it has been envisioned. It is connected to agriculture. It is connected to real estate. And that's where your steel and alloys come. So it's connected to the value chains and it's connected to trade. So that is possible. Yeah. The only thing that I have a problem with their manifesto is that as manufacturing grows and increases, again, our labor is not infinite. Yeah, so you will find, because most probably manufacturing will be paying more, you'll find more people moving away from the agricultural sector in terms of labor to more of the higher paying jobs and income, which means that they will have to be mechanizing the agricultural sector fast enough, because then you will see manufacturing go to 30% and the agricultural component of GDP go in the opposite direction. They cannot move upwards at the same pace because of factor mobility between the two, resource mobility between the two. Yeah. So there, I think they've played with you can't grow agriculture to 30%, manufacturing to 30% at the same time. Yeah. One will go down as the other one increases.
All right. Dr. Kiru, what are your thoughts on this? Number 19, growing manufacturing to at least 30%. What would it take to achieve that?
Let me start off from where he began.
Yeah.
And I appreciate his point about market access and the niche. At least we're in agreement that it is possible to find a niche product from each county and market it. Of course, I also agree with him that the Kenyan market may not be enough. But lucky for us, you're pursuing a regional integration policies and deepening trade. And intra-Africa trade is one avenue of ensuring that our locally manufactured goods are able to find markets, not just in Kenya, but within Africa. So there, I agree with him. The other point is really a question. Manufacturing was part of the Big Four agenda. A lot of resources were devoted into it. And there, the target was very modest. Grow it from 8.4% to 15%, very modest targets. Where did we go? It stagnated at 10% of GDP. If we thought the massive resources we put into it, currently, because you're still on the same policy, we've only managed 1.6. How then do we do, how do we go to 30? Please tell me what you're going to do differently before I take the discussion further.
Okay.
I think,
Trevor, I can answer that.
Let me give you, go ahead.
The difference with Jubilee is Jubilee, the regimes are going to be different. As I said, the Jubilee thought manufacturing is bringing Volvo to set up plants here. That was one mistake that Jubilee did. Number two, Jubilee's budget should never be taken as a policy statement anywhere. Jubilee's budget was an avenue for corruption and eating. Most of that money never went to where it was supposed to go. And that's why we are in the mess that we are in right now. 2013 to 2017, they borrowed 3.8 trillion, and we only have SGR to account for it. We cannot account for the other 2-point-something trillion because it went to people's pockets. So if you look at the policy statement for Jubilee from the budget perspective, you will get frustrated because then a lot of money was put in a lot of areas, and we have seen no translation whatsoever in either income growth or even output growth. So if you are to do manufacturing, you have to connect it to value chains, because that way you have one, it's sustainable. If it's the agricultural value chain, it is sustainable. If it is the real estate value chain, it is sustainable. But you cannot do manufacturing just for the sake of manufacturing. You cannot do manufacturing just for the sake of saying, oh, now we are manufacturing Volvos, and your own population cannot even afford to buy the Volvos. And that was the problem with Jubilee. Okay. So I think we'll be able to reach the 30%. If we deal with manufacturing along the value chain. Okay. So we are not looking at large-scale manufacturing. We are looking at what does the agricultural sector need. So in Muranga, it's milk. Do they need cold storage? What parts of those things can we actually manufacture here? We don't have to manufacture the whole cold storage, but if it's gas cylinders, can we manufacture them in Muranga instead of importing the gas cylinders that are used to cool the spare parts that are needed to fix a cold storage? If it has gone down, are we able to manufacture those spare parts? That's manufacturing. But this Jubilee business of Volvo and stuff like that, no.
Okay. Reginald is not being too fair to my president and to our government. I think the president admitted to such hefty graft in the first part of Jubilee regime and said, listen, this can't go on. And when he saw it, he acted on it. He engaged these other agencies to give us, a team that was to try and deal with graft. And working together with the judiciary, sometimes they've cried the judiciary hasn't done much. Sometimes the judiciary says it's not us, it's DPP who hasn't given us enough. Sometimes DCI and DPP, all those things. But credit to them, if you look at the Asset Recovery Management Authority, or the Asset Recovery Authority, and the amount they've been able to get back from graft, it's quite significant, as opposed to before they went into this fight against corruption. But that's been a very dismal attempt to deal with it. And I know that all factors remaining constant, if the environment is conducive and then we really deal with corruption, if we really deal with it, we will have surplus. Secondly, our manufacturing moved to 11.2% contributor as a contributor of GDP, not 10. But you need to also accept and appreciate that all this when we lost 2 years to COVID. Let's agree to it. Other countries have made reverses that they are not even coming out of just yet. It was a global pandemic. There are factors, international factors involved in manufacturing and placing it to the top. Thirdly, when you say that we hope that manufacturing moves to 30% contributor of the GDP, then we need to know that the president who's going to take over the leadership of Kenya has a long way to go and a short time to get there, because he is the president to deliver the Vision 2030. The president we choose here is the one who will make us go back to our original idea of Vision 2030 and say, behold, if countries like the UAE, when we went to Dubai Expo, it's a whole city running on clean energy, a whole city powered by clean energy that was far-flung in the desert, done in 4 years, a whole city. It speaks to the possibility where there is discipline, fiscal discipline, human discipline, discipline in everywhere we go. And the country must understand that this discipline will start from all of us. It's not about the president only doing his mandate. And yes, we are talking about all these value chains. We are talking about one county, one product. We are talking about having cold storages in the agenda, in the manifesto. Cold storages in each constituency, at least a single cold storage. Possible and achievable. because so far we have been able to achieve 7 in this short span, when the original objective wasn't really to spread them across nation. We are talking about infrastructural development, all moving in tandem, and we must have counties that interface correctly with the national government. That as they receive more disbursed to them, they can be held accountable even much more. There are functions of governance that lie within the purview of counties. Now, we must then hold to account the governors who have been in office so far and ask them. Trade, for example, all the markets moved from under the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise, and they were moved to the counties. Have you dignified our people by creating marketplaces and giving them sheds from where they can work? Infrastructures that are dignified. All right? And so all the factors of manufacturing held constant, availability of power cheaply. It won't just happen by fluke. And that is why I think the broader perspective around it is what impresses me as a public policy enthusiast and public service management professional. That if you're talking about reducing the cost of power, availing infrastructure for these things, ensuring connectivity of things like water, and above all, the unimaginably brilliant idea for creating the Intergovernmental Grant Fund, where business people can go and get cheap credit, a very key component of creating industries. And we must not be about the biggest of industries. It's about the modest. How do we move our nano businesses into micro? And how do we push our micro into medium and our medium into large and multinational? Yeah. The structure around creating the fund for the Micro Small Enterprise Authority, which will, I believe, grant 50 to 200,000, interest-free within first month, and subsequently create, very minimum interest for the small person, is what will move them into the bigger brackets. And for the big boys who need 200 million, the Kenya Development Corporation, which has been the amalgamation of ICDC and the Industrial Development Bank, if that were to be created, is the Intergovernmental Grant Fund, Guarantee Fund, that would be such relief for businessmen, because the only other thing that has really stifled us, that has been a catalyst of development of the manufacturing sector in other countries, is availability of cheap credit to purchase equipment and manufacture.
All right. Dr. Kiru, I see you agreeing with Waziri there on this analogy. Do you see it from his perspective, or is there more?
The analogy, what analogy exactly are you talking about?
On the credit that is being given to the small SMEs so that they are revamped into a much bigger potential.
For sure. There is potential. I mean, any forward-looking president coming or sitting must see that the future of this country, for example, you cannot ignore about 73% of the main employers of this country, which is the SME sector. So actually that's a very good starting point, making easy for SMEs to thrive and to grow. And again, don't forget, that's a private sector. Yeah. SME is a private sector. Yes, I wish we looked at this thing in terms of incorporating not just the public, but also the private sector. You see, if you look at these manifestos, they are heavy in terms of free university education, free health, free. Who say that Kenyans are looking for free? And please tell me, in Kenya today, how will a free university education look? Look at what we have which is not free at the moment. Go to the hostels. Talk to us lecturers, the conditions under which I have never had a university laptop. I buy my printers, I buy my paper.
You want free and you're saying you don't want free.
That's the point. The point is that is not free, and we are still not able to make it. Yeah. We are still not able to fund even the basics. When it is free, what happens? Even the buildings would be painted or what? How do we live? What?
You don't think that's realistic?
And we don't want it.
No, I don't.
Make it affordable and quality.
Okay.
Yes, we don't want free because we know what free is.
Okay.
Free is just bure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't agree with Daktari that the manifesto is only public-facing but not private sector-facing.
Yeah.
When we create intergovernmental, when the manifesto says that there will be creation of the Intergovernmental Guarantee Fund, it's a guarantee fund for everybody. The Kenya Development Corporation today, the IDB, which was under my ministry, which has now moved to amalgamated under Ministry of, under Treasury and Planning, is a fund that gives money, but not for free. Only the terms are better. Because I also agree, our small, the shoe shiner who just needs 20,000 to stock up on his polish and brushes should be able to get that money and return it even at just 3 or 5%. Dignify that person to grow into the brackets where now you can charge him 10% on reducing balance, and that will make sense to him.
Yeah.
The manifesto has a duty, the government has a duty to its public, but the necessitators and the people who make that possible is the private sector. The government, in and of itself, cannot create employment. They have to create a conducive environment that then allows for creation of employment. Hence the special economic zones, hence the industrial parks, hence the export processing zones that are envisaged in the manifesto, but also that exist currently. This regime of President Uhuru Kenyatta, I dare say, has moved Kenya in the ease of doing business list from 126. Now we speak of being positioned 56 in the world in his tenure. And I think that's marked progress to demonstrate the possibility of Kenya becoming a destination for business. So yes, is it possible to achieve free university education? Why is Israel doing it? How have they done it?
They invested early and they enjoyed their harvest.
Why don't we start today and enjoy our harvest 10 years later, Daktari?
Okay,
it's possible for us.
Okay,
so we graduated. If, free primary education was not even imagined until Kibaki did it. If Raila Odinga, God willing, if he becomes president, were to achieve even just free secondary education for starters, while reducing the cost of university education for the locals, because even globally in the UK, the nationals of the UK study at it's a pittance compared to the international students who pay an arm, a leg, 3 kidneys, and 2 hearts. All right? So I think it is possible to achieve this. I don't want us to be clogged by pessimism.
Yeah.
We must believe. I know we come from a past where our hope has been disappointed. All right? It is possible that it may be disappointed again. But it doesn't stop us from trying and believing that we can achieve it. And its achievement does not lie squarely with the political class, but with each one of us doing our parts towards it.
Yeah. Reginald, economically speaking, is it even practical to have free education? That is one of the things that we're talking about here, all the way from primary to the university.
I think it's possible if done well, and if you close the loopholes of corruption. And why do we want at least free education, free healthcare, making sure people have water, and pretty much social protection? You see, if you allow the economy just to grow on a capitalist trajectory, the income inequality that we have becomes humongous. You will have super rich people and super poor people, and you'll be lucky even if you create a middle income. So a government comes into play and says, okay, which areas can we subsidize for the better good of the whole country? So if you subsidize, and in this case, it seems like 100% subsidy on education, you are saying a better educated population pays more dividends in the future than having only the ones who can afford be able to pay education. A healthy nation pays dividends in the future because this is the labor force you are looking for sustained economic growth. So I look at it as not free, because nothing is free. The government is paying for it. We are taxed to pay it. But it's a government investing in fixed capital formation in the area of labor. To make sure that we have a labor force that is educated and healthy, living a dignified life with access to water and sanitary service. So I come back and say the Azimio manifesto is balanced because they have taken care of those basics. There is no point of growing an economy which is with a sick labor force. There's no point of growing an economy with an uneducated labor force, because you'll reach a point where labor becomes expensive because there are only few people who are educated and they are now all jostling for the same job. So it goes to the highest bidder. So these basics, it's where the government needs to come and play. And say, this is a public good. We need to sort out our labor for the future. Yeah. We need to have an educated labor. So apart from just making it free, like Professor said, Professor Joy, in terms of quality, where do we want to project ourselves as a country? So if we want to industrialize, we want to go into manufacturing, we need to see also our education angling in that area, because it has to be connected. We can't want to say we want to be the Silicon Savannah of the world, but then you are churning out more accountants and economists and social workers than IT people. And then there's a disconnect between your education system and the economic blueprint of a country. So in certain areas, yes, it's an investment that we are making as a country from our taxes. So it's not free, because there's nothing free, but it is necessary.
All right. Let me bring up some of your feedback and then we get into the first 100 days of this manifesto. I see here there's a layout plan and rollout of the economic stimulus and recovery plan within the first 100 days. This is post-COVID, they say. What does that stimulus need to look like? But let's bring up some of your feedback first and then get a reaction and then we see what goes on from there. Ndalo says only poverty can make someone argue that second-hand clothes Mtumba are better than brand new clothes. Okay. D. Warira says, I agree with Kazutsu that when you mix economics and politics, you lose the plot. Reviving the textile industry will also create jobs along the value chain, among other benefits for our economy. Okay? Ambuko says, well said, Osian, we need to grow our textile industry. The benefits thereof outweigh the price of banning Mitumba. That is what Rwanda did, and now they're exporting to the US. Mitumba must go. Okay. Engineer Lazaro says the best method of transforming Kenya to industrial nation is to caution appetite to importation of products that can be locally produced. China tried it before and they're now among the G7 nations. Let's encourage local entrepreneurship. Bobotino Wino says you can't do away with Mitumba. It has provided business opportunities to millions of Kenyans than textile industries can do. Okelo Mwalimu says, as a patriotic Kenyan, I'd welcome any proposal aimed at promoting and protecting local textile industries. Importation of second-hand clothes is the major threat to success of local industries. It's possible to phase out Mitumba as we empower traders to sell local clothes. Okay. Dennis Kinge says, tell Kiru, even if some of us aren't economists, we know how Rwanda government is doing. The government there is taxing very high on Mitumba, and that is going to happen here in Kenya. It's doable. Okay. Brian says, why is the focus only on Mitumba when even the suits the people talking about Mitumba are themselves imported? Why then not ban all the imported clothes regardless of whether it's Mitumba or new? Okay. Sam Karidi says, there's a massive direct investment appetite for textiles and apparels in Kenya. There's a great move from producing in Asia towards Africa, and these companies have been lining up in Kenya as late as 2 weeks ago, trying to push for an enabling environment. Mogires Jasper says, in 2002, your elite analysts said it was impossible to budget without loans from Wazungu, free primary education, bypasses cause of grabbed land, secondary education. If we get our heads together, Mitumba can be replaced by new clothes. University education can be free. Hey. Okay? All right. That's your feedback. Thank you so much for that. Kiru, let's bring into the 100 days. Yeah? The first 100 days of this manifesto. They say there's going to be an economic revolution, stimulus and recovery. Lay out a plan and roll out an economic stimulus and recovery plan. So they've not mentioned how much or where it would be put into, but how should an economic stimulus package look like? What areas should they focus on now? Okay. Within the first 100 days.
The first 100 days, yeah. I think the only thing that I agree with this manifesto in terms of what needs to be done in the first 100 days is the strengthening governance and making sure that those loopholes are where the money is leaking, because you have to create the fiscal space now to start doing the economic stimulus. The first 100 days, they are inheriting almost empty coffers, right? Yeah. So they must start looking, where do we get the money? And they're saying that there's 2 billion hemorrhaging every day from the country. Now, the question is, have they discovered that some of these things that they are going to be doing are some of the things that the hemorrhage is happening? Why are they obsessed with building dams, building classrooms, and building all that? Because of the procurement opportunities, whereby they procure a class is done by 5 times, 3 times, whatever. Have they thought about how they are going to transform the procurement system of this country? Because we want to see that. Have they thought about how they are going to relieve themselves of these duties of building this, building that, by involving the private sector in some PPPs in a way that the interests for the common person are taken up by the government part, whereas the interests of efficiency are taken up by the private sector? That is the government taking care of the common person and the private sector taking care of the efficiency part of it. Have they thought about that? Because unless they convince us that we have known how this 2 million is getting finished, is going out, 2 billion per day is getting stolen, we are going to plug it like 1, 2, 3. Then now we can start talking about these other things. The first 100 days, again, employing over 300,000 teachers. It's a tall order. Cash transfers. Of course, I agree, cash transfers have got a place in terms of building resilience and reducing poverty. The first 100 days. The point is, the lease for first 100 days is too long. If they were to attempt it like it is, they would only create a macro instability, because they're already getting into an economy which is already not at its best.
Yeah.
There is external shocks, like we have nothing to do with the fuel. It just comes and finds us. It comes, and it's a crisis right now, the prices. The war in Ukraine is impacting us. There's nothing we can do about it. It comes and finding us. Yeah. We don't know that there may be another outbreak. I mean, shocks are likely to come. So they're taking such a context.
Yeah.
So if they go and start doing what they're doing, saying they want to do in the first 100 days, it's economical. But I'm glad, because this, like I said, this is a manifesto. It only gets us to State House. Yeah. Once we get there, we do what needs to be done.
Road. Yeah, and Waziri, you know, Dr. Kiru is calling it a macro instability, because even then, there's a lot of things here. I just can't read through all of them. Yeah. There's one on the youth and creative economy and sports, where they'll create a Ministry of Youth and implement the 7-year tax holiday at a time when revenue is the main concern.
Yeah, but those are startups.
Yes, but that doesn't then cut out the possibility of government making more revenue, because as it stands right now, they are taxing everyone. Now, if you give a 7-year tax holiday, how do you then start? Is this just for the youth? Is it for startups that have just started now? Can we backtrack it? If I'm still a youth and I say now that I have a new business, do I now move everything else and say now I deserve a 7-year tax holiday?
Yeah.
That's the macro instability that Dr. Kiru is talking about.
No, I think we need to, Dr. I told her, we need to read the document. When we read the document, we will appreciate that most of the 100 days, the first 100 days deliverables for the Azimio presidential candidate are not about finances. They will not need the huge resources that will cause the macro instability. When he says in the first 100 days, we will restructure and review the manufacturing policies to ensure a more holistic one that's desirable for investors, that needs not money. That needs brains to sit down and create it. When he says that we will push for the introduction of life sentencing for poaching, that doesn't need a dime. That needs a committed workforce in the judicial system alongside with the constitutional office that will possibly be led by Honorable Martha Karua. When he says that we will, for example, begin giving the 6,000 shillings to
most
vulnerable households, there has to be a framework for determining vulnerability. And so by the time we get to that vulnerability, it's possible. My problem is if we are able to decisively plug in the holes of graft, where graft, as Reginald was saying, that graft is budgeted for. I'm sorry if that's the case. I mean, I don't come from Treasury. But if that were the case and you review it and say, listen, we can be able to tell that a CDF, why would CDF, for example, charge 2 million to do a class when if I was to donate a class to a primary school, I would use 850,000 to construct it. Those are the conversations that I think Raila Odinga will be seeking to have. That first 100 days, list is a list of initiating what then carries the country into the manifestation we hope to experience. A manifesto, of course, derived from to manifest, which means it is the hope and work towards a manifestation. What we hope to see, this is our pathway. And so if you look at those first 100 days, it will be relooking at the policy issues for the country that the president, Raila Odinga, should he be president, and we hope he does, he will be able to say, these are the policy issues. On this, I agree with the previous regime. On this, I believe we need to tinker a bit and change them for us to then deliver all these things we are working towards.
Yeah.
So the first 100 days is a long list, but if you keenly look through that list, there would be less than 8 or 7 things that need funding. And if that funding is needed, not as massive as we imagine, especially if we curb corruption decisively.
Okay. Reginald, what are your thoughts on this? Will it tinker with the stability of the economy, like Dr. Kiru is saying, a macro instability? Because there are quite a number of external factors that we have no control over.
So the list of things to do for 100 days is long. I've read it, and I would like to agree with David on this. Or was it David? His denies me entry into the country. Most of them are policy-based and building of frameworks. But the key important one, which is there within the first 100 days, is dealing with the debt animal. Yeah, there is the line item for renegotiating our debt and asking for debt waivers. We need to accept that the Azimio Brigade, if you remove the Jubilee part of it, have not been in government, and they are not in government. So when they come in is when they will get information that they are normally not privy to and realize the deep hole that we are in terms of finances, like what Professor Joy said, that the coffers are empty. So I believe that once they take over power, if they do, then it will prioritize itself from there. And the first one definitely would be, how do we handle the debt issue that we have? Because 70% to 80% of all revenue that KRA are collecting is going to debt repayment. So if any government that comes in and does not deal with that as the first priority thing, they will have no money to do anything. The debt ceiling is only at 10 trillion. Which I think only 200 or so billion will be left after this budget cycle goes through. So if any government that is coming into power does not go and say, let's go renegotiate debt, let's go ask for debt waivers without destroying the local financial system, because the most expensive debt we have is actually local debt. That will be the main priority for the first 100 days, because then that will give you the fiscal space and the headroom to be able to actually start implementing the greater part of their manifesto. And I hope the Zuma government does not also try to do some of the mistakes that Jubilee tried to do, is to try and implement everything in one budget cycle or in one term in 5 years, because then that will be disastrous and will lead to just excessive borrowing, trying to tick boxes. I hope they can create a platform which then any successive government, whether they like them or not, will say, these are good things, let's build on them and carry on forward. And we have administrative continuity.
All right. Joy, I'd like to take closing remarks because we've run out of time here. But there are quite a number of things in the 100 days. I wish we had all the time to talk about them, because there's also under manufacturing, waive regulatory and other licensing fees for new youth-led manufacturing innovations that will have a direct impact on revenue streams, right? But still, as your closing remark, as Kenyans look at these manifestos, and more of them will come, where should their focus be on? Because they may not have all the capacity to synthesize into detail when there's politics and economics and everything else jumbled into one. What should they be thinking of?
I think one of the things that this manifesto, especially this particular one, is missing out is the issue of resilience.
Yeah.
We are talking about increasing the debt ceiling. We're talking about the economy growing despite all and external shocks. We are talking about exposing ourselves to much more external influences because of the policies that we pursue and we have to pursue. But the question is, have we factored how we are going to build a resilient livelihoods for Kenyans? Resilience means that, you see, you can have a job today. Tomorrow, if your job is not there, how would your livelihood look like? What would be the impact? tomorrow, for example, when this government comes into power, for example, how are they going to ensure that the economy is resilient and can withstand shocks? And that is really a question that which has not been answered. We need to see resilience being created in a way that they can tell us, even if there's another COVID or another pandemic, we are prepared in 1, 2, 3 resilience. Instead, what I'm seeing is really opening up and exposing us to more and more external shocks and really reducing our ability to withstand shocks in the future.
Okay. Reginald, closing remarks?
I hope as Mio, if they do take power, that they will look at the saving side of the economy, because if we increase our saving culture, we can actually be able to reduce our appetite especially for foreign debt. The Singapore that everyone likes to look at and copy and all, 40% of people's salaries used to go into a CPF kind of fund, 6% of it goes to health, and it grew a lot of savings, which allowed the government to reduce taxes and be able to grow because they had accumulated enough savings. So if we are going to also build a resilient economy, we need to look at how do we increase the saving rate in the country so that we have locally generated funds for even infrastructure projects and implementing some of these things so that we are not reliant on debt.
All right. Waziri.
Resilience it doesn't come from the air, it comes from resources. Resources we can only be able to get those resources when we time and stop graft. When we genuinely go after graft and stop it. I don't think the Azimio, Dr. Kira said that they're going to borrow more. There's nowhere in that manifesto that says they're going to seek out more money. Contrary to that, they say they're going to be inward looking to try and save what we have so that we don't have to raise the debt ceiling. This country, I think, has a choice and a chance to read. And the problem we have is we listen to pontifications with our biases already and then decide, ile nani amesema ndio ukweli. I want Kenyans to be a bit more open-minded as I'm reading through the comment section, even as we are having these discussions and we are all trying to put in our heads together. We need to appreciate that, yes, resilience is a factor, but for me, I am big on sustainability. How do we start and keep the fire burning? How do we start a journey to reducing debt and sustain it? How do we start a journey to empowering a manufacturing sector and sustain it? How do we start a journey to, when we talk about recognizing prior learning, which is, I think, a brilliant idea, which doesn't shut out all the brilliant young people who did not go to university, but that did not rob them of their brilliance because their parents did not have fees. And that Okech, who is my mechanic in Langata, or Kibe, can on Ngong Road can literally be recognized. They may not have automotive engineering degree, but for their skill and capability, they can be recognized as equivalents of graduate holders. And so sustainability for me is the big thing. If we're going to talk environment and climate change, and you talk about the credits, the carbon, our carbon credits and footprints globally, and recycling and reusing, how are we able to sustain that so that the president who is elected in 2022 bequeaths the next president a better country, a reformed country? Kibaki showed us how to do it before. So I am an optimist that with the correct leadership that's tested and tried, leadership that seeks out for the best of the people, leadership that holds optimism but with a dose of pragmatism and reality, and understands, okay, let's be pragmatic. This is the situation at hand. How do I sort it out? So it is resources that will be able to guarantee us safety nets that protects and gives us the resilience. And towards that end, I believe, if it is read and implemented as holistically imagined, because by looking at the 100 days deliverables, I can see a pragmatic writing that doesn't say we have money to throw at this, money to throw at that, money to throw at that. Rather, we have the brains to relook at this, the brilliance to check this out, and the commitment to transform these frameworks that then guarantees those resources to come. If it is implemented as envisaged in the document, we are able to deliver a double-digit growth economy for this country.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for making time, Honorable David Osian, CAS Moited, which is Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development, Reginald Kazutu, CEO, Amana Capital, and Dr. Joy Kiru, economist. Thank you so much for making time this morning. Let's say we leave it for now. Coming up next is health and lifestyle. Cancer and lifestyle is what they're talking about. Felix Okoth is here. Odero is a nutritionist, and Dr. Elizabeth Warui speaking to Shara Boy in just a bit.